Unfortunately, we have lost Clem now. She's had to go and watch Hamlet, which, of course, we can't blame her for. But the rest of us are now going to talk about patterns. So we're just going to start off thinking about, is there anything we notice that comes up lots throughout the book? Or does this book remind us of anything else that we've read or seen? So what we'll do is we'll go round everybody, and everybody can have a go at kind of sharing a pattern, and then we'll talk about them, and then we'll see what else comes up. So we'll start with Soraya. What's one pattern you'd like to share?
So the book that they read, that he had recommended in the book, the front cover is like the front cover of this book. So it's like, and the story is quite similar as well. Like something's happening to a younger sibling or someone younger, and then the main character's worried about it.
Mm. And it's Skellig, isn't it? It's the book that they talk about throughout. And Nate spends the summer holidays in the library, doesn't he, when he reads all the David Almond books. Why do you think that Matt Goodfellow might have used that book so much throughout this book? There's similar themes?
Maybe it's because it's the same story, like, I've forgotten what it says, but the character in Skellig, their baby's ill, and then Nate's younger brother's ill, and then like it all gets better, and they're like, yeah.
It relates quite a lot.
It does relate quite a lot, and it has a kind of, maybe there's a similar message in there as well about there's always hope, yeah, absolutely, and also about how we talked a lot earlier, didn't we, about how this book is really relatable, and it helped you to process some of the things that happen in your lives. And actually, Nate has a similar experience, doesn't he? By reading Skellig in school, it helps him to make sense of some of the things that are happening in his life. So that's interesting. So Skellig it comes up all the way through. Like I say, the front cover is based on Skellig. There's lots of references to the angels.
There's
reading it through.
There's a picture from when Nate goes to Caleb's house of on his wall. I think it's Nate with Skellig.
With Skellig wings. Yeah. Great. Izzy, what about your connection?
Oh yeah, I think it kind of reminds me of a book series called Cogheart.
Tell me
so
about that.
Basically, the main character is a girl called Lily, whose dad gets kidnapped, and her mum dies.
Okay.
Her mum died when she was 6, and she teams up with this boy called Robert, who's the clockmaker's son, whose dad also sadly dies. In the book, he dies. He gets burned alive.
Right.
Which is. She has a mechanical fox called Malcolm, and they go on these adventures together to go find her dad. And I think it kind of connects to this because it's like Nate hasn't got his dad around, and his mum's not always there, so it's like he's trying to find his dad even though he's not.
There's a lot of books, isn't there, about children with absent parents. I think earlier somebody mentioned Harry Potter. You know, it's a very famous example of that. And why do you think that there are so many books about children with absent parents? Why do you think so many books have that storyline?
I think it's like that because a lot of people in real life have that problem. Yeah. So it kind of just like
It's very unfortunate.
saying it's okay, but like not okay, because like it's okay, we understand, but then obviously it must be heartbreaking.
Also, it makes you feel more for the main character. Like you feel sad, and like if something happens to them, even more happens to them, you feel like even more sorrow for them.
Yeah.
It's kind of saying like, oh, you shouldn't be shamed for just not having a parent.
Yeah, and
it's not your fault.
enables us to have a bit more understanding for that situation. Emma, what do you find as a
It
connection?
kind of links to the book 365 Poems for Every Day, because Matt did write a lot in as poetry, so it kind of links to this. And also there's a poem, something I think it's about like a boy finding his purpose, and it kind of does link a lot with the book.
Do you think that's one of the main themes of this book? Yeah, is about how Nate does struggle, but he does kind of find his way through that. Yeah. Okay. We'll come back to talk about some of these in a minute.
I found that Three Little Birds comes up a lot because Mr. Joshua sings it, of course, but then it's like Nate and his two brothers. There's those three, and then there's Nate, Caleb, and PS, and then there's the 3 missing dads, and then it just keeps coming up all the time again and again.
Yeah, it is that repeated symbol.
Groups of 3.
There's lots of groups of 3, isn't there? And obviously the song does kind of punctuate the book. And what's the kind of message, the main message of that song?
Everything's going to be all right.
Yeah.
It's a very positive song.
It is.
Very heartwarming.
And also
It's a very
three-
positive song.
3 is known as the lucky number.
Yeah, three is the magic number, the lucky number.
Auntie San only needed a 3 to win the bingo.
That's right.
3 times the charm.
Yeah.
3rd time's a charm.
Yeah. So that kind of, there's the connotations of 3. So both those two things together, the 3 and also the every little thing's going to be all right, links to the idea of hope. Ruby, what patterns did you notice?
I noticed like a light and dark pattern. It's not like the colours light and dark, but it's like how sometimes it can be really sad and really heartbreaking, but the other time it can be really happy and really like.
And it really does change from one poem to the other, doesn't it? So you have one thing that's really positive and then straight after it.
Like the next poem is really sad.
Yeah. And that kind of reflection of how life is kind of up and down and light and dark and positive and negative and sad and happy. And it really kind of does reflect that, doesn't it? Sarai, you mentioned earlier something about the 2 poems that were side by side that you thought was quite funny. Can you remember what you talked about then?
Oh yeah. So it has bidmas, which is
Bracket.
which is something that is in maths, and so and it says what it actually means.
Yeah.
It says.
Has anyone found that one?
So it's what it actually means, and then what Mr. Joshua says, and then it says what the beast is saying, which is that his brother is dying. Make a scene.
Yeah. Absolutely, and that links to what Ruby talked about earlier about this kind of change between light and dark, and that juxtaposition between, you know, him having to get on with his daily life and learn his maths, but at the same time his worries about his brother dying, and we
the
go
poem
from
after that is the beast exploding out of him.
Yeah.
He starts flipping desks and
Yeah.
yelling.
and that's another pattern, isn't it, throughout this book? The beast, the presence of the beast.
Yeah, and then Mr. Joshua just telling him to calm down and find his light. The next part.
That's always a bit that's always mentioned. Mr. Joshua's always trying to help him find the light.
Yeah, there's like a whole part that says it's like
Find your
imagine him in a cave finding his light.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like trying to help him find his light, find
Yeah,
his people,
find his people. That's another.
find his family.
Find his people, and I think that's the kind of the beast again. Going back to what Ruby was saying, you've got this kind of negative. You've got the beast. You've got his anger. You've got his fear. You've got his worry, and then alongside that, you've got him finding himself. And the beast kind of happens less, doesn't it, as we go through? Yeah. What do you think the beast? What is the beast a metaphor for?
Like his anger, which he's trying to cage up and keep inside of him, but sometimes it breaks out.
That's a really great way of describing it.
Metaphor for people burying all their emotions deep down,
Yeah.
and then at some point it will just burst out
Yeah.
of them, whether it's in sadness or anger or fear, or
Yeah.
Yeah, like
any emotion.
yeah, it could be saying that because if he were to have anger issues, because it doesn't really tell you, but it's kind of giving you hints and clues that
It's got
could.
connotations of anger.
Yeah, it does.
Anger. And I love the way that Sarah described it as a bit being this caged creature that kind of breaks free. And he's constantly trying to kind of keep
like
this
something
beast under
shaped like
control.
Slips through
It's
the
like
cracks.
It
it's
does,
like
yeah.
something shameful he's trying to hide away
Yeah,
from.
it's like he's ashamed to let it out.
But
Yeah.
sometimes it does get out when he doesn't want it to.
Almost as if it's like in a prison, but it's trying to break out.
It's like it's something ugly that the world doesn't want to see, even though the world needs to see it to
Yeah.
understand more.
Exactly, there's connotations of beast, something kind of ugly,
It's not
something.
pleasant.
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. So that's a really interesting kind of pattern that figures throughout this the book, and something somebody mentioned earlier, which I'd like to come back to. So somebody talked about this, the middle page, and how that seems to be different to the rest of the book. So
He's very happy and like he's found a real friend.
so you think that this represents friendship?
It's like a real friend at the top of a mountain.
And what else could that symbolise? Do you think this picture? So it's not actually got a page number, but it's on page 144. So if you find 143, and then what might this kind of symbolise? This picture, so friendship,
Maybe them both reaching the top.
reaching the top.
Reaching the top of their lives.
Yeah, potentially.
Hoping that it won't come back down.
Yeah.
That could be symbolising like he's actually got a friend now who he can trust and do things with.
Yeah.
A friend who won't just
Like,
turn him the second someone bigger comes
Reaching their goals, as in like if they set a goal to like climb the mountain,
and they did it.
they've done it together.
Right, okay, so they're doing it together, that friendship.
And he said something just before us about like feeling more at peace there than anywhere else.
Yeah. And it's almost like that's the moment that maybe Nate sees that there's life outside of
Where he is.
where he is, yeah.
Yeah, like
Hope.
there's hope and life outside of the small town he's in.
Maybe it's like what he's always wanted his small town to be like, and he's
Yeah.
found this.
And maybe it's like when he leaves and goes into the Lake District, going into the countryside, it's like, I don't have to worry about this anymore.
It's like the sun is
got-
shining.
I can relax.
And everything opens up in front of him, and that picture really does show that, doesn't it? It's like it's everything's opened up in front of him, and it's like peaceful, and he can relax and leave behind some of those troubles that he's had. Although then the troubles follow, because this is before Dylan gets ill, isn't it? So so that's kind of, I think that's kind of an important part of the book. What about themes then? So when we talk about a book, often we talk about some of the themes, and so patterns can also be about linking it to the world, the real world, and the kind of our own lives. So what do we think some of the main themes in this book are?
I mean, this book really relates to like school, like now, because it can be really stressful, but like leading up to it, it can be really stressful. But when you finally get to it, you can just breathe.
Yeah. And that's a really good way of describing it, isn't it? That difference between the stress of anticipating something and then the reality of when it comes around. So what do you think the writer might have wanted us to learn from this book? What messages do you think that Matt Goodfellow might have wanted us to take away? And I'm going to come over to this side first, then we'll work around this way. What do you think, Ruby?
I think maybe it's because lots of people go through really hard times, but sometimes they think that nobody is really going through that same way as you. But like in real life, everyone is technically going through something that's not great.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important message, isn't it? And I think that this book does that really well. It enables us to kind of think we don't always know what people are going through, and maybe to have a little bit of empathy. When we see how people behave or see the things that they do, to actually stop and think, I wonder what they're going through that has made them act like that. I think that's a really important message. George, do you have any ideas about what you think he might have wanted us to learn?
Whatever you're going through, someone else in the world is going to be going through it at the same time as you.
Yeah.
So just know that you're not the only person.
Yeah, it's a really positive message. And also that maybe things will be okay. That kind of idea of every little thing. There's always hope. Every little thing's going to be all right. Soraya, have you got anything that you think that he might have wanted us to learn?
Maybe that even though you might find like a new friend or something, like with PS, you don't want to just leave your other ones behind. Like you may still want to be friends with them, even if your new friend doesn't like them. It doesn't mean that you can't. It doesn't mean that you have to not like them either.
I think that's a really good point. And one of the things I really like about this actually is that when PS kind of ditched Nate to become friends with Turner, and then Nate became friends with Caleb, when PS came back into Nate's life, he didn't just ditch Caleb, did he? No. It then became the three of them. He stayed loyal, and I think that's a really good message.
He opened his arms for both of them, not like how PS did with Turner and with Nate.
Exactly. So maybe we can learn something from Nate about how to kind of navigate those friendship issues and
to keep in the beast, because he did struggle at the start to keep in the beast, but then he kind of everything started going on, and although it was kind of quite a lot dramatic, he still managed to keep it in more because he had nothing to be mad at for. He only had things to be upset for.
Yeah.
Maybe he needed something horrific in his life to happen so he could control the beast.
That's a really interesting interpretation, that actually things were kind of up and down in his life, but when Dylan was ill, I mean, the beast did escape once, that time in the classroom when he kind of smashed the classroom up, but then because Mr. Joshua was there for him and helped him, he was able then to kind of control it.
Instead of sending him to a room where he could be told off, he helped
Yeah.
Yeah, because Mr. Joshua is quite calm.
Yeah.
Because he understands what Nate's been going through. So he's kind of just telling him, it's okay, calm down, you'll be fine.
Yeah. And he really did kind of help him. And there's a lot of, we've already talked about, there's like a lot of symbols throughout this book, lots of symbolism. So what's some of the symbols that we've talked about? Can anyone remember any of the ones we've talked about?
It was the angel wings, like there's a guardian angel above him.
Yeah.
And the constant symbol of his dad being there, so it's like Jesus is watching them.
Yeah. It's that idea of protection. And actually the way that Nate takes on that kind of guardian angel as well.
I found that picture in Caleb's room, and it isn't actually Nate, it's Caleb's dad with the angel wings.
Yeah.
So it's like showing that his dad's his guardian angel.
Yeah.
It's on page 130.
So that idea of kind of protection and watching over people and kind of helping them is kind of quite key. And that's a key part of Skellig, isn't it?
And maybe because he's got the wings on the front, he's his family's guardian angel. Because his dad and his mum were never there, so he's his younger brother's guardian angel, just like how Caleb's dad was his.
Yeah, and the poem does say,
it's really interesting.
Every bit of bare plaster is covered with drawings. It's like he's tipped out his head in there, and right above his bed is a picture of his dad with angel wings. So it is like he draws everything he wants on his walls, and he doesn't he's not restricted.
And there's lots of kind of elements of kind of like fairy stories and adventure stories where there was someone always comes and saves the day.
Yeah, it looks like there's two, there's like a dragon and a dinosaur, which can be like beasts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the name of the beast.
So just thinking about the wings, just finally, before you read this book, when somebody brought this home and gave it to you, what did you think this book was going to be about? I'm going to start at this side this time. Go on, what did you think?
I kind of thought it would be a bit magical.
Okay. And what made you think that?
Because angels, they're quite mythical. So they're not, nobody knows if they're real or not. So it could have been a bit magical and mythical.
So you thought and so were you surprised when it was much more kind of realistic than that? Do you understand, having read it, kind of why the front cover is the way that it is? Yeah. Over here.
When I saw it, I was like, the final year, does this mean the final year of life? Or because and yeah, when I saw the wings, I was like, maybe it's a boy finding his way and being the last one standing.
Okay. Right, interesting.
I can't really remember what I thought, but I think I thought of maybe the wings are representing something more than just the boy at the front. Because I didn't know it was Nate.
Okay, we just thought it was a boy, we didn't know what the wings meant. What about you, Sheree?
I thought it was just going to be about either going into the last year of primary school or going from the last year into the first year of secondary.
Okay.
Never really thought much of the wings either.
No, okay. I'm really pleased it wasn't, but when I first read it, I thought that this person, whoever it was going to die, and become, because that idea of kind of angel. So I was quite relieved that didn't happen, but I thought it was just a really good representation of what we've talked about, this idea of guardian and protecting, and kind of looking after, that kind of goes all the way through this book. Yeah. So anybody else got anything they'd like to add about any patterns that you've noticed?
There's a page where it's Nate patting the beasts on its nose on page 198, and it's kind of it's just him making peace with it. Yeah. Instead of trying to fight it.
Oh, that's really interesting, yes.
But except it's before Dylan goes into hospital, so maybe he made peace.
Yeah.
So maybe, I think it is, isn't it?
It's when Nate and Jax are in the school office because of what happened to Dylan.
When they've gone back into school.
And it says, I thought you might like to carry on reading, Nate. See where you get to.
Yeah.
But it's kind of
So it's giving him the freedom to read on.
Yeah, that's what we've talked about, isn't it? About how, as the book goes on, he learns to control the beast, to kind of to keep it, and actually the beast there is portrayed as something quite tame, as opposed to that kind of wild beast that Soraya described.
Because he was calmer, so he was in control of the beast there, but later on he just couldn't later on or early, he just couldn't control it, so it looked more evil.
And also, it's a dragon, and I remember one of the drawings on Caleb's wall was a dragon, so it's almost like Caleb knows
So,
what
Yeah.
the beast is.
so maybe like Nate's beast is a dragon, and like Caleb's beast is like the dinosaur that was on the wall.
He's both got the dragon and dinosaur.
Yeah, that's right.
I think in this picture the dragon looks quite calm and cute, and like how I've always imagined dragons to be, like
Yeah.
quite peaceful.
And it's almost like that reading Skellig is helping Nate to tame that beast, because it says here, go on.
Because it almost is like someone else is going through the same thing.
Exactly. He's able to kind of see himself, and we've talked about how when you're able to see yourself represented in a book, it can really help you to deal with things. You know, those of you who were in year 5 were kind of saying it's helped you to think about what year 6 is like, and those of you in year 6, it's helped you to kind of really process some of those things, and those of you that are in year 7, it's helped you to reflect back on the things that happened. And he talks here about, I count the breaths and the spaces in between the quiet bits, and I find myself in Michael's garden, deep in the wilderness. The blackbird watches me silently, and Mina's in her tree. Those eyes, man, those eyes. And the beast is held back.
He's like relieved.
Yeah. And it's almost like by thinking of that experience that somebody else is going through in a book, it's able to kind of help him.
It says Michael's garden and Mina, and they're both mentioned in Skellig.
Yeah, they're both characters in Skellig, and then straight after that, Mr. Joshua comes in and gives him the copy of the book. So he kind of knows, he knows.
He knew he was going to give him the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that brings our discussion to an end. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Ruby. Thank you, George. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Izzy. And thank you, Soraya. And I've really enjoyed talking about the final year with you today.